Okay, I thought of a good example. It's partly an analogy, but it's also an illustration of what I was talking about. When I was in the Army, my best friend was a fellow by the name of Sigvard Horneman. He had kind of an interesting background. He was born and raised in the Galapagos Islands of Ecuador. He was fluent in several languages, but because his family hosted scientific expeditions. Okay, but there were no schools, and his parents never made him learn to read and write. And for some reason, he didn't get the idea that he should. Which knowing kind of surprises me. I would think he would have wanted to, but he didn't. But somewhere along the age of 18 or 19, I guess, he decided he wanted to immigrate to the United States. He needed a sponsor to do that, so he had enough contacts in the scientific and community here in the United States that he was able to find a sponsor, and came to the United States. And not long after that, was drafted. This was during the Vietnam War era, and I was drafted about that same time. We were both conscientious objectors, so we wound up in the same basic training company in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. The guy was real smart, and I was kind of smart too, so we hit it off. He had an interesting career in the military. All of 2 years we were draftees. Kind of think, I had an interesting career in the military also, kind of surprising, but in a different way. The military operates by its own set of rules.
Yeah.
There's the military has its own legal system. Yeah. And the rules and regulations by which it operates that don't have any direct correspondence to how things are in civilian life. Okay, well, Sigvard was anti-military. He was anti-Vietnam. Anti the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And anti-false authority. And so there was constantly friction between him and the military. And they would constantly challenge him on this and that, and he would tell them they were wrong, and he would tell them what the law said. And if they didn't know, they checked it up, they found out he was right. You'd never seen military regulations. You can read them. But there was a part of his brain that thought like a military lawyer. it just happened to be there, and when he landed in the military, uh, after seeing just uh, uh, well, from the very beginning, actually, before I'd met him, some of the things he told me, uh, he just had an instinctive. He had an instinctive understanding of how the military worked. Even though he had no prior exposure to it, but it just he picked up on clues how it works, just like that. There's thousands and thousands of military regulations. Okay, but lurking behind that, they form a pattern, and behind the pattern, there are just a few simple rules that interact to create that pattern. And something about his brain was able to work backwards to what rules created the pattern of which he was seeing the results of that pattern.
I see.
And so the whole time he was in the military, he was under investigation for possibly being a communist. His attitudes were distinctively leftist. There was no disputing that. Yeah. The military must have spent a fortune investigating him. And he always had them dead to rights. It one time he was one time they were interrogating him about the stupid being a commie stuff, and the investigator said, "Are you willing to take a lie detector test?" And he said, "Sure, provided that I give you a lie detector test first." And the investigator agreed. And so Sigmund was giving this guy a lie detector test. It starts out with a little bit of a fishing expedition, and including, of course, an emphasis on the insanity of war. And Sigvard said something like, "Well, your son, he's in the military, and he's cannon fodder. How do you feel about that?" Okay, yep. Lo and behold, the guy did have a son in the military. Oh, actually, this is very common.
Yeah.
Yeah, military tends to run in families. And Sigvard says, and he's there in Vietnam right now getting shot at. And that's what you approve of. You approve of your son being shot at. He may be, he may be the first one in your family to come home in a box. And the guy just started crying.
Wow.
Didn't want, after that, didn't even want to give Sigvard a lie detector test. Didn't want to go from bad to worse.
Yeah.
But that's an example of living in agreement. The military law operates under a rather simple set of rules. What is that simple set of rules? Most lawyers don't even know. All they know is the details. They can cite the regulations, but they don't understand what forms the pattern that the regulations take.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sigvard worked backwards through the pattern to grasp the underlying rules so that he knew what the regulations were without ever having to be told. Yeah, he got away with all kinds of stuff. And the funny part is, he did some things that could have landed him in prison for a long time. But that wasn't what they were looking for, so they didn't find it. They were so obsessed with, are you or not a commie? He was I suppose most people who may be watching this, who maybe that's 2 or 3 people, who knows, know what the Underground Railroad was back in the 1800s. It was a network of safe houses that helped the slaves escape from the north and then resettle in, escape from the south and resettle in the north. In the military during that era, there was a network of people who were getting people out of the army on mostly medical discharges that were well documented, but well documented, as opposed to, for example, substantiated by facts. Because in the military there was an underground railroad. Finding people who wanted to get out of the army, and and were willing to go through the Underground Railroad in order to exit the Army. And of course, there was risk. Everybody involved, those who were taking it, those who were taking a ride on the Underground Railroad, and those who were operating the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about it until afterwards. After we were out. But I was under the impression that as far as he knew, nobody had been caught. So I was living the agreement. I was a draftee. I was a conscientious objector. I had a distinctly anti-military attitude. It wasn't really political in the customary sense of that word. No, it was just a personal thing.
Yeah.
The entire time I was in the Army, I never touched a weapon. It gets more interesting than that, though. The Army, instead of sending me to Vietnam like they could have, sent me to a post called Fort Huachuca, a place I didn't know existed. But ever since I was a little kid, a toddler, I had a love affair with Arizona. And if I had had my pick of all of the posts on the entire planet, that's the one I would have picked. The military sent me there. I didn't even know the place existed. For a while I worked in the hospital and gained a reputation for both being a fairly good medic and for pissing the brass off. Okay, well, both of those things actually worked to my advantage. Yeah. The brass decided they wanted me someplace else. And so they put me in charge of the dispensary at Libby Army Airfield. So I was out of their hair, but they knew I was competent. So they weren't worried about me being a fuck up. So it all worked out good. They got what they wanted out of the deal, and they gave me a great deal. I got to run a dispensary at the airfield, which meant I got flight pay. And for some reason they kept on giving me rank. Let's see, 1224. I think it was in about 16 or 17 months I was already up to Spec 5. They kept on giving me rank. They gave me what I thought was the best job on post. And I've puzzled deeply about all of that for many, many years. And finally decided that if there is an explanation, it has something to do with living in agreement. Because I've seen a similar pattern elsewhere, and some other things that have happened and not happened in my life. In my entire life, nobody's ever beat me up. Yeah. No, yeah. Not because I'm a big badass motherfucker that nobody wants to mess with. No, I'm just a regular guy, maybe even a wimp. I've only been in one real fight in my life. And it was must have been 16 or 17. You know, one of the neighborhood kids decided that him and me really needed to have a fight. What's the hell about? You know, what do we need to fight about? Well, he just had the idea that we needed to fight. That's all. But I didn't know what the hell the beef was. He just needed to. He needed to fight me. I had no clue as to why. And but he figured I was a neighborhood wimp, and he attended La Sierra High School. We were right on the border. You know, we were neighbors, but he attended one high school. I attended another. La Sierra High School was John F. Kennedy's model physical fitness school, so he thought he was big shit. And I was a neighborhood wimp, and he needed to beat me up. Couldn't talk him out of it, so he took a swing at me, and I threw him on the ground. and kept him there. And he finally realized that I wasn't letting him get back up. He didn't expect anything like that to happen. Listen, I don't like fighting like a worm. I want to fight like a man. I said, well, fighting is for worms. You know, you want to fight you like a worm. You know, there you're lying on the ground. I'm sitting on you. I said, so just just tell me you're done with fighting, and I'll get off. So he said, okay, I'm done with fighting. So I got off him, and I said, I was just kidding. He took another swing at me, so I threw him on the ground again. And anyway, I told her, just tell me you don't want to fight anymore, and I'll get off. And he finally decided that what he didn't know is that I don't fist fight. I wrestle. And I only knew about 2 good moves, but that's all it took. So, yeah. That, that came out the way it did. In part because I realized the folly of fist fighting.
Yeah.
It's really stupid.
Yeah.
And if I tried to be good at fist fighting, then any fight I got into, I was going to lose.
Yeah.
So, I enjoyed wrestling. I wasn't especially good at it, but wasn't so terrible at it either. And wrestling is just fun. You know, it's the objective is not to hurt anybody. So it's understanding understanding the rules behind that pattern that led to the outcome of the only real fight I was ever in. And in a way, I don't even say that I won because that wasn't the objective.
Yeah.
I was just trying to stop a stupid fight. So, so many times in my life, you know, things have gone my way against the odds, and it feels like there's somebody up there looking out for me.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not really what it is. There's a set of rules that creates the patterns that we live in, and to the extent that you discern the patterns and live in accordance with the pattern here in a part that you know about, then other parts of the patterns that you don't know about will also work in that same way.
One moment. Okay, we're running out of time again.
Okay.
You got a minute.
Go ahead and turn it off. We'll reboot it in a couple more minutes and see if I got anything left.
Okay.